Buenas tardes a todos y todas. Sean bienvenidos a un nuevo seminario de nuestro portal Alimentación para la Salud, un esfuerzo continuo y coordinado por el Programa Universitario de Investigación en Salud, el TEC de Monterrey y la Dirección de Nutrición del Instituto Nacional de Ciencias Médicas y Nutrición. En esta ocasión nos vestimos de lujo nuevamente con un ponente destacado, la doctora Katarzyna Dembska de la Fundación Barilla. Agradezco mucho la intervención de la doctora Sonia Masari, también de la misma fundación. Nuestro portal junto con la Fundación Barilla comparten el interés de una alimentación sustentable, por lo cual la doctora Dembska nos hablará sobre los retos para tener una doble pirámide, una nutrición adecuada, compatible con un ambiente perdurable. Dejo la coordinación al doctor Alessandro Martagón, quien es el coordinador académico de nuestro portal. Muchas gracias, Alessandro. Bienvenida, doctora Dembska, y adelante.
Muchas gracias, doctora Aguilar. Bueno, voy a pasar la plática se va a dar en inglés, y así que I will introduce Dr. Dembska today. She's with us. I'm going to talk a little bit about what she's been doing in the past couple of years. And she currently is the research project manager for the Barilla Center for Food and Nutrition Foundation. And she has specialized in multi-step cognitive behavioral therapy for obesity and cognitive behavioral therapy for eating disorders. She has a bachelor's in science in dietetics and a master in science in nutrition science, both earned at the University of Florence with a cum laude. Since 2014, she has worked on research and education projects promoting food system sustainability, such as the Double Pyramid, which she's talking about today to us, and the Food Sustainability Index. She is the nutrition advisor for the Suitable project, which is financed by the European Union LIFE program. This program aims to reduce the environmental impact of food choices by engaging in promoting a healthier and more sustainable diet in university and work canteens. She is a guest lecturer in different universities around the world, some of them in Finland, France, and different universities in Italy. Today, it is a great pleasure to have you, Dr. Dembska, here with us in Alimentación para la Salud, and the mic is all yours. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much for this very warm introduction. It's a pleasure to be here and have the opportunity to present the work of the Barilla Foundation and specifically the Double Pyramid. I hope you can see my presentation correctly, which will guide my presentation today. Before I start, I would like to spend a couple of words on the Barilla Foundation, explaining the mission and the vision. The Barilla Foundation is an independent center, so I'm here not representing the Barilla company, but the foundation, which has a different aim. The aim of the foundation is to provide scientific contents and become a reference point, a tool for institutions, scientific community, media, and people on different topics related to food and specifically food sustainability. So the multidisciplinary approach is something that characterizes our work. So we can say that it's a meeting point for anyone who is interested in food, the environment, sustainable growth, and of course, all its implication on the people and the planet. The vision of the foundation and all its activities is to enable people, to help them make informed choices regarding food and nutrition, and trying to capture as much as possible the environmental dimension of our food choices. So before we dive in, this is just a framework to understand also what guides our project what type of messages we try to convey. And unfortunately, today the current food system is unsustainable. We are at a crossroad where business as usual cannot continue. So we have outlined the current state of the food system in what we have called the 3 global food paradoxes. So the first paradox is the nutritional challenges, where on one side we have people who die from hunger. On the other side, we have overweight and obesity that are rising. Today, according to the latest FAO reports, 811 million people are hungry, and unfortunately also due to COVID and the economic effects of the pandemic, these numbers are rising, and we are very far from actually reaching the sustainable development goal of achieving zero hunger by 2030. On the other side, more than 2 billion people are obese or overweight, and if we sum those people together, it's almost half of the global population that has an unhealthy relationship with food. It's either too much or too little. This quest also makes us reflect on the challenges that agriculture is facing today. So again, in a context where we have people also still that do not have enough food to survive, we also have natural resources that are becoming more and more scarce. And currently 67% of the global crop production is destined for human nutrition. About 1/4 is produced and is used as animal feed, while 9% instead has industrial uses, so production of bioplastics and biofuels, for example. And this, of course, is another challenge, because with those scarce resources, do we really have to choose if to feed people, animals, or cars? And then the final paradox is the food waste paradox, where, again, reconnecting to those people that do not have enough food to survive. On the other side, we have 1.3 billion tons of food that is perfectly edible, but is wasted during the different stages of food production, from cultivation to distribution to the households. And that is more than enough food to feed those that are hungry. So maybe the problem on a global level is not that we're not producing enough food, we're actually producing enough, if not too much. It's how this food is distributed, and the food system is not efficient. Today we are using the resources, so I'm talking about land or water, for example, as if we had more than 1.5 planets at our disposal. And if we continue with this scenario in 2050, we will be using the resources as if we had 3 planets at disposition. And of course, many things have to change in order to reverse this trend. So here is also where the foundation comes into place. So we work on what we have called the 3 E's. So enable the transition for sustainable and healthy dietary patterns, educate, so spread the message about all of those interconnections, focusing a lot also on the new generation of consumers. And of course, exchange knowledge, experiences, and best practices, because there is a lot of projects and initiatives that are going on across the world. And this can be an inspiration to change the scenario that we have just seen. So definitely there is a need for a change in the way that we consume food. If we try to narrow down this very big scenario to a little bit a narrower scenario, we can see that on one side, unhealthy diets contribute to disability and death. They are the #1 risk factor for non-communicable diseases, and actually no country is exempt from, for example, the rise of overweight and obesity. On the other side, food systems are responsible for 37% of greenhouse gas emissions and other environmental pressures, but food is not only the problem. Food is also the solution, and much can be done both in terms of promoting health and reducing the pressure on the environment. Keeping always in mind also that the United Nations have set up the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and we can definitely say that food is connected to all the Sustainable Development Goals, meaning that they can be both an objective, such as zero hunger that I was mentioning before, but can also be a mean to obtain sustainable development at all levels. Food can be a way to reduce inequalities. Food can be a way to promote climate action. So again, be part of the solution. Now, getting more specific regarding the double health and climate pyramid, the objective of this project, of this publication and the model is to unleash the great power of sustainable and healthy diets. And it wants to be a tool that can be used in different contexts to inform food choices. So here again, going back to that mission of the Barilla Foundation. The Double Health and Climate Pyramid is a project that we have worked on in collaboration with the University of Naples, Federico II, and they have been mostly responsible for developing the health part of the double pyramid, which I will show you soon. So the double pyramid is made of two pyramids. We have a health pyramid and a climate pyramid, and those two pyramids talk to each other. And first, I would like to provide some background on how the health pyramid has been built and what are its objectives. So I think many of you are familiar with the healthy eating pyramid, which exists in many versions. And the objective of the health pyramid in this specific case, in this specific project, was to link the consumption of specific food items to health outcomes, and specifically to the risk of cardiovascular diseases. So we're talking about myocardial infarction, stroke, and sudden death. Among all the possible health outcomes, cardiovascular disease was chosen because the relationship between this type of non-communicable disease and food is one of the most studied relationships in scientific literature, and because a diet recommended for cardiovascular health is in line with the prevention of all sorts of other diseases like diabetes, cancer, and neurodegenerative diseases. So the first step was to define food groups and layers of the health pyramid. And this was possible throughout different steps. So first of all, a literature review was carried out to identify the link between the consumption of food and health outcomes, and related specifically, in fact, to the cardiovascular diseases. After those relationships have been identified, the foods have been clustered into 18 food groups that are similar for the food items that represent those food groups for their nutritional features and their impact on health. And then those 18 groups have been stratified into 7 layers based on the impact on health. So each layer corresponds to a recommended frequency of consumption, starting from the bottom where we have the food groups that should be eaten more frequently, going towards the top to the foods that should be eaten less frequently. On the other side, we have a climate pyramid. So this is a second step. It is important also to underline that in our double pyramid, the health pyramid guides, we can say, the climate pyramid. So with the second climate pyramid, we wanted to find a way to measure the impact of food on the environment. Now, there is plenty of indicators that measure this relationship. We could use the water footprint, for example, or you can use the environmental footprint. You can look at biodiversity, or you can look at food loss. Of course, sustainability has many, many dimensions, but we have decided to focus on the carbon footprint of food. So you will see this expressed as kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalents, because this is one of the most used indicators to assess environmental impact of food systems. In fact, this means that there is a vast amount of literature, of data related to food items and also the different food production systems. So we have data on the carbon footprint of food, for example, that is grown in greenhouse gases and greenhouses. Sorry, and again, this indicator is also very relevant, especially in the context of decarbonization and climate change mitigation. So in Europe, specifically in the farm to fork strategy and in the Green Deal. So it is something that is very relevant also for policymakers. Now, the carbon footprint values all come from a database that was created also in the context of another project that we have followed in the foundation. It's a project called Suitable Life, and we have published this database that includes more than 3,000 footprint values, and it's published in Scientific Data, which is a journal by Nature Research. And this is, of course, available and open access. So we invite, of course, to consult also those values. So again, here, the methodology followed the footprints of the health pyramid. So starting from this background database where we have more than 3,000 values of carbon footprint, 3 steps have been carried out to build the climate pyramid. So first of all, the food items in the database have been matched with the food items and food groups in the health pyramid. And again, we were able to recreate the 18 groups from the health pyramid. Then the second step was to calculate the median carbon footprint for each group. And these values account, in fact, for the different types of production systems. So we have the conventional or organic agriculture, we have the heated and non-heated greenhouses. So these are considered. Footprints, though, consider the production phase up to the distribution. So factors such as, for example, cooking at home or other factors that might influence the carbon footprint are not considered in this database. And finally, from the median carbon footprint and the 18 food groups, we were able to define the layers of the climate pyramid through a clustering analysis. And this gave birth to a pyramid, again, that has 7 layers. And you have ranges of food groups that have very low carbon footprint to food groups that have a very high of carbon footprint. And here we have the final health and climate double pyramid. So connecting, in fact, the 2 messages. So starting from the bottom, in the health pyramid, we have whole grains, such as whole grain rice or whole grain bread. We have vegetables and fruits. And these are food groups that are recommended to be consumed twice a day. In the next level, we have low glycemic index foods. We have non-tropical vegetable oil, such as sunflower oils, or it could be extra virgin olive oil. We have nuts and seeds, such as almonds or other types of nuts, and fermented milk. So yogurt here is considered as a separate category from milk and cheese because of the beneficial effects derived from the fermented milk that have been observed also in relationship to cardiovascular risk. In the third step, we have fish and legumes, so the preferred sources of protein to be consumed from 3 to 4 times a week. The next step, we have cheese, milk, eggs, and poultry to be consumed up to 3 times a week. And also those recommendations are linked to a portion on a standard 2000 calorie diet. There are more details also in the publication if you would like to have a look at those standardized portions. So if we have something such as milk that is recommended up to 3 times a week, that portion can be divided into 2. If I remember correctly, the portion here is 200 milliliters, so 100 milliliters of milk then per day. It's the same portion and the same frequency that is maybe split and spread during the days. Going further up, we have high glycemic index foods such as refined flour, potatoes are in this category as well. And all over at the top, we have cakes and pastries, red meat such as pork and beef, animal fats and tropical oils such as butter or palm oil. And in the final layer, we have processed meat, which is recommended to be consumed, if consumed at all, occasionally. So maybe once or even less than once a week. And I think that an important message also that the pyramid tries to convey is that all foods can be part of a healthy diet. There is no food that is forbidden. So there is room also for cakes and pastries, for example, but it is all a matter of frequency of consumption and of portion. So the message that the pyramid tries to convey is also a positive one, where foods, again, can be arranged and all foods can be part of a healthy diet if I think about frequency with this type of logic. If we look on the right side on the climate impact pyramid, what we see basically is that red meat, cheese, and processed meat, which are on the top of the pyramid, have the highest carbon footprint. And this is due to the fact that most of the footprint derives from animal feed, so from the production of animal feed, and also, for example, from methane emissions in case of the ruminants. Fish and animal fats and tropical oils have a medium-high footprint. Fish, especially if it's farmed, again, has a carbon footprint that is due to the production of animal feed. And in case of fish that is fished in open waters, for example, the carbon footprint is mainly related to the logistics and transportation. Then going towards the bottom of the pyramid, we find here fermented milk, eggs, and poultry. So again, here reflecting how the animal feed and the amount of that animal feed influences the carbon footprint. And going towards the bottom, we have all basically the plant-based foods. So going from vegetables, fruits to whole grains, legumes, and low and high glycemic index foods. And here the variation of carbon footprint is mainly due to the production system. So for example, a heated greenhouse will of course generate a higher amount of emissions compared, for example, to fruits and vegetables that are cultivated in open field or according to season. Another important message that the double pyramid conveys is that there is a very strong relationship between what is favoring my health and what is favoring the health of the environment. So you can see that there's a very strong horizontal relationship. Foods that are supposed to be consumed more frequently because they reduce cardiovascular disease risk and because they promote my health are and happen to be also the foods that have a lower carbon footprint. And see here the same relationship can be seen on the top, where the foods that should be eaten less frequently or in moderation are usually the ones also that have a higher carbon footprint. And again, going back to that message where we try to say that in order to change everything, you can eat everything. It's the approach you have towards this eating everything that changes. That first of all, I am informed about my choice and I know what are the consequences of my choices. At the same time, knowing the consequences does not mean that I have to exclude, eliminate, or ban certain foods. It is maybe again a matter of frequency and reducing the number of occasions, for example, during the week. So yes, here it's just written. I will be happy also to share this PowerPoint presentation if you would like to have a look at it again with the key messages. So again, the relationship between health and the environment, the message that all foods can be part of the environment, of a healthy diet, and basically that a healthy and sustainable diet includes a large share of plant-based foods such as fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Legumes and nuts, together with fish, also are preferred sources of protein, followed by poultry and eggs and cheese, with limited amounts of red meat and processed meats, where non-tropical vegetable oils should be preferred sources of fat, so used to cook or used as a condiment, in respect to, for example, butter or coconut oil or palm oil instead, where the frequency of consumption should be reduced. Now, moving again beyond this concept, which has been designed from a scientific perspective, trying to convey again this message that all foods can be part of a healthy and sustainable diet, we wanted to take this message a step further and understanding that throughout the world there is richness and a diversity of culinary tradition that should be celebrated. And when we talk about sustainable and healthy diets, and we look at the different traditions and food habits that exist around the world, we find out that there are multiple versions, multiple possibilities, actually infinite possibilities of healthy and sustainable diets. So this is also to underline also a certain vision where, for example, since I am in Italy and we are used to the Mediterranean diet, a sustainable and healthy diet can mean a Mediterranean diet in my cultural context. If I move, for example, to Northern Europe, maybe promoting extra virgin olive oil doesn't really make so much sense. And definitely there is a local source of vegetable oil that can be used and can have a good effect on health and on the environment. So in this context, we have developed 7 double cultural pyramids. And we have now selected only 7 regions, but we hope we will be expanding those regions and getting even more cultures part of the double pyramid. And what we have done here is that we have selected representative countries, for example, for the Mediterranean region, and we have developed a double pyramid for Latin America as well. And we have chosen representative countries based on population size and geographical location. And after a literature review and a consultation with nutrition experts, we have involved about 21 experts from different parts of the world and different continents who identified the most representative food items of the region. For each of the 18 groups, we have defined the cultural pyramids where the the base of the food groups stays the same. What changes is the representative food item in a specific food group. So here is the 7 regions that we have analyzed. So going from the Nordics and Canada to the Mediterranean, the United States. We have looked at East Asia and South Asia, at Latin America and Africa. So I'm going to provide just an example with the Latin America double pyramid. And you can see here how, for example, we have the same food groups. So we have whole grains, fruits, and vegetables that are exactly the same as in the global model that I have showed you earlier. What changes here is the different representative items. So if we look at vegetables, for example, we have squash and the bell pepper. We have tropical fruit, such as papayas or bananas. In the non-tropical vegetable oils, for example, we have included the avocado, and in the low glycemic index foods, we have all the different foods that derive from corn flour, such as tacos or tortillas. So again, trying to identify foods where the culture and the people could identify themselves with, and by identifying also those elements, it was possible to have a better impact, we can say, in terms of understanding, of identification, and so on. And for each of those seven different cultural pyramids that I have shown you before, we have also collaborated with the chefs to prepare, we can say, double pyramid recipes. And the first 7 recipes, so one for each of the cultural pyramids, is available on our website, and I invite you to consult them. And we are also in the phase now of finishing the work on a cookbook, where we will have 14 recipes developed for each one of the cultural double pyramids, all those developed in collaboration with chefs that come from schools across the world and from those specific regions, that can capture also all of those elements of beauty, of sharing, of creating something that is beautiful and tasty, because we also strongly believe that chefs have very high potential in developing, in spreading the message on sustainable diets, because of course the research aspect is very important, and it is important also to convey a message that is scientifically sound and science-based. But then at the end of the day, when you communicate to people and you want to make sure that certain messages are interiorized and can be attractive, we have thought that leveraging, in fact, on this cultural aspect and on the beauty of cooking is then something that can be very effective, because, as I said, at the end of the day, what people want is to eat something good, to eat something that is tasty, that is inviting. And again, there is plenty of recipes that already exist in the traditional way of cooking, including Latin America, where going back also to a certain traditional way of eating, where food is locally sourced, where it's harvested according to the season, is a way of going towards a sustainable way of eating. So we can also say that maybe sustainable eating isn't reinvention or a new way of eating. It can be a way of discovering one's roots and rediscovering tradition. And just some final remarks, just to underline again that food systems, as we have seen today, present a very worrying scenario, but we mustn't forget that food can nurture human health and can contribute to environmental sustainability. Food can be a solution, and the Double Pyramid wants to underline this message that through a varied and balanced diet, we can promote our health, longevity, and well-being, while we reduce also our carbon footprint. And of course, there's no silver bullet. We have to be able to adapt to local contexts, to identify what is culturally acceptable and what is also sustainable in terms of an economic perspective. And in our paper, we have also created some recommendations. So from the analysis of this relationship between health and food, what can all the actors in the food system do to improve food system sustainability? And some actions can be such as the inclusion of sustainability and health across all policies, where policies dialogue between each other, establish standards on sustainable diet, promote and reconnect sustainability with tradition and heritage, devise policy interventions that can establish a framework change, foster also integrated urban food policies, where more than half of the population today actually lives in a city, build an infrastructure and promote training and educational programs, not only to the new generation, but to adults as well, supporting, for example, also farmers and assuring access markets for nutritious food, adopting a greener food procurement policy, propose, test, and fine-tune sustainability principles. Another important key factor, which I consider, is the redirection of agricultural subsidies, because sustainable choices and sustainable diets are possible in an environment where all actors contribute to sustainable diets, and agricultural subsidies should be redirected from staple crops to foods that are really nutritious, nutrient dense, and sustainable. And finally, favor the adoption of healthy and sustainable food choices by creating food environments, for example, in schools, in workplaces, that make the sustainable food choice the default ones and also the most interesting and accepted ones. So I hope that this presentation has given you some food for thought, and we hope that the Double Pyramid can be a tool for promoting this type of message, for being a base, for example, of education projects and for real change within the food system towards one that is more healthy and sustainable. And I'll just leave you with the last slide, where I invite you to consult the website of the Barilla Foundation. Together with the Double Pyramids, which are downloadable for free, we have published the One Health Approach to Food report, and you will find all the details on the development of the Double Health and Climate Pyramid, which I have presented today. The report is available for free and in English. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me by email or by LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dembska, for this amazing talk. I think this is really insightful, and your recommendations are really valuable from the side of talking about those standard portions and their impact in climate. I think that the most important thought that we should take home is that we can actually promote health and eat healthy while reducing the carbon footprint. We have a few questions. I don't know if Dr. Aguilar wants to comment something or ask a question. We have a few questions before we close the session.
Thank you, Alessandro. There are many food pyramids available. How do you put in a context for regional countries that are in a developing process these kind of recommendations? For example, for Latin America or Africa.
Mm-hmm. So the development of the standard pyramid, we can say, had a global approach. So the first revision of the scientific literature was carried out considering a global scenario. So we can say that the double pyramid is a standard model that can be adapted to different contexts, and according to the different cultural context, what changes is the food item. Then there's a second level, we can say, where we haven't done the research ourselves, but if you look, for example, at all the work that has been done by the Eat Lancet Commission, there is an evaluation of a baseline. So of a baseline on where the greatest change should happen. So just to give an example, the greatest reduction in terms of red meat consumption should happen in G20 countries, should happen, for example, in Northern America, in Europe, and those are the two critical areas where this type of intervention is more important compared, for example, to Southeast Asia or Africa, where the amount of greenhouse gases related to the consumption of red meat is minimal if we compare that to the G20 countries. So there are different priorities to be set according to the different context. What we can say is that the ultimate goal is the same for the different contexts. So what also in the Eat Lancet studies emerges is, for example, that fruit and vegetable consumption is insufficient in all continents. So again, the double pyramid can be a guide where the objective is, okay, consume fruits and vegetables twice a day, and the entity of that increase is subjective to the different continents, such as, for example, the consumption of nuts and seeds is not sufficient across the different continents as well. So this is a type of research that, again, has been carried out by the Eat Lancet that has defined those baselines and those deltas from the baseline in a very specific and contextual way. What we maybe bring is a recommendation that tries to be declined into the cultural aspects, where, of course, also you have to consider the dimension of acceptability and affordability. And we hope that by capturing the local food and the traditional food, this dimension is captured as well.
Thank you so much for your comment and excellent talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Alessandro.
Thank you, Dr. Aguilar. We have a couple more questions. Somebody's asking if you have thought about what is the impact of food waste and how can industries get involved in this reduction of the carbon footprint?
Yeah, so the carbon footprint of food waste, unfortunately, is enormous. It's about 8% of the greenhouse gas emissions. And if we imagined that food waste was a country, it would be the third country emitting greenhouse gases after China and the United States. So this gives us the entity also in terms of climate impact. And the action should occur at different levels. So the first important distinction is to divide food losses from food waste. So food waste that happens at a consumer level, in the retail in the restaurant, for example, or at home. And this type of waste is usually prevented through consumer education that can be done, for example, by teaching how to make a list of food that should be bought, what is really necessary, try to avoid the big discounts that can generate waste and bulk buying. What happens instead before that phase, so including, for example, what happens in the industrial phase or in the distribution phase, is something that can be addressed with a conjoint action. So on one side, we can have industry that, for example, can improve packaging, it can improve certain conservation standards. On the other hand, you can have a lot of work that can be done on a policy level. So just recently, for example, in Italy, they have introduced a law on food waste for the big retailers, where now it is much more convenient for the retailers to donate that food rather than dispose it and dump it, because before this law, the VAT was not paid on the disposed food, so it was from an economic perspective more convenient to throw that food away rather than donate it or redistribute it. So there was a loophole, a gap in the policy, and this can be addressed only through a conjoint action on a policy level. And then again, I think just one last idea is also the perspective on the consumer. And the consumer's perspective can have a change in this direction as well, because if we think, for example, at all the standards, for example, for fruits and vegetables that should have a certain shape, should have a certain standard that is flawless. The carrot is perfectly straight, so you can peel it very well. It's actually something that is cosmetic perception of food that actually generates a lot of waste, because the carrots, for example, that look ugly aren't even collected in the field because there is no market for them. And things are changing a little bit. So again, here the food industry can come into place by also, for example, creating new food products from those foods that are not widely accepted from an aesthetic point of view. But on the other side, there is some work done also by retailers in promoting acceptability of those foods that aren't so accepted for mere cosmetic regions. So there is now actually, I think, much more awareness and also much more demand for consumers to not waste, because the consumer is much more aware on what's going on.
Great, that is wonderful information. Another question, talking about local contexts. Have you thought about developing national or local cultural double pyramids? This is because, for example, even in our country, in Mexico, within the same country, there is a different nutrition habits, like in the north, in the center, in the south.
Yes,
so it would be useful to have a local or national pyramid. Have you thought about doing that, or do you have
Yes, well, we are perfectly aware that the more you try to widen the geographical context, the flatter the pyramid becomes. And we know that, I mean, this is, of course, the example of Mexico, and Italy itself has a very diverse regional cuisine. So it's a first step. We are aware that Africa, for example, cannot be represented by one single pyramid, and that there's so much diversity. Our next step is going to try to make those regions a little bit smaller. And we, of course, welcome feedback. We welcome any suggestions. But then, as maybe an exercise, and I'm thinking about also maybe teachers or educators that can promote the double pyramid in schools, why don't you construct your own double pyramid? because again, the possible alternatives are infinite. And even if we developed, I don't know, 1,000 double pyramids, it would still not be all of them. So this can be a base where you can work with kids at school, with different projects, and it will be great to actually see people putting in their thoughts on what they feel that the double pyramid should represent.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Another question, you already gave us an example, but they were asking, what are some examples of the devising of public policies in the government, for example, in Italy or in the European Union, about policies that you are modifying or implementing in order to improve and reduce this carbon footprint?
Yeah, so I think there is a lot of change going at the European Union level, as I mentioned earlier with the Green Deal, European Green Deal, and with the Farm to Fork strategy, which is a subcategory of this Green Deal that aims to decarbonize the European Union and make the continent carbon neutral by 2050. And I think that there has been a very big step forward in recognizing the role of food. This is a big step because usually also on a policy level, the discussion on climate mitigation rotates around energy and the transportation mainly. And it's really a breakthrough that they have understood that so much has to be done also in the way that food is produced and consumed. And this has generated a lot of opportunities also in terms of funding for projects that promote a sustainable way of eating. So also at the Barilla Foundation, for example, we take advantage of that. So we are just closing now a project that has lasted for 3 years, a project that has received the financing from the European Union, the Suitable Life, which I was briefly touching earlier with the development of the carbon footprint database. This was actually just a small part of a very big project carried out in Italy and the UK to promote sustainable food consumption in canteens in schools and universities and workplaces. What we did is that we helped the caterers and the managers of the canteens to offer sustainable meals every day, and we educated the consumers of the canteens. So there is a ripple effect. So you start from a policy and from a recognition on a very high level to actually an implementation of a program on a local level with direct effect also on people. And there is a very fast change on a European level. At least in Italy, I can see that there is some things changing, especially on urban level, because that's where policy implementation is maybe the fastest. Because I was talking about the good practice on on food waste, but actually achieving that law, I don't know, took maybe 20 years, if not more. So things change much more rapidly on the municipality level, of course. So there is now a direction towards this sustainability of food systems. And I invite you also to consult also the initiatives that the city of Milan is doing, because it's a forefront runner in implementing all those types of policies and actions.
Perfect, thank you. Some people are asking for where can they access all of this information. So if you could please share us your presentation and some of the information, and we will upload it to our platform Alimentación para la Salud later, so they can have access to all of the information. Yes,
of course. So I invite you to consult the barillacfn.com website. There is a section in English, and under publications and Double Pyramid, you will be able to download, for example, the One Health approach to food, paper, and it's about 100 pages that explain you the rationale and all the scientific development of the double pyramid, and you have the recipes as well. And on the website, you will be able to consult also the different projects of the foundation, so including the Suitable Life that I was presenting before. And as I said, I'll be very happy to share the presentation, so you can absolutely circulate it and spread the word.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Aguilar. I don't know if you want to close the session.
Thank you, Alessandro. Thank you so much, Dr. Dembska. It was a wonderful session. The message, we shared your thoughts about the preservation of the environment and the applicability of the regulations of the Double Pyramid. Thank you so very much. Y muchas gracias a toda la audiencia por participar en nuestras sesiones, y los invitamos a seguir usando nuestro portal. Reitero mi gratitud al Programa Universitario de Investigación en Salud por el apoyo logístico en esta sesión. Muchas gracias a la licenciada Gamboa y a todo su equipo. Gracias, Alessandro, por coordinar la sesión, y que tengan muy buena tarde. Good evening for you.
Muchas gracias. El link para el registro para la constancia estará abierto 2 horas posterior a que se cierre este evento, así que pueden registrarse en el canal de YouTube y recibirán su constancia. Muchas gracias a todos por su asistencia. Dr. Dembska, thank you again so much for your wonderful talk.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.